Home defense strategies. So let's quickly break down how I would recommend you store firearms in the house so that you could respond to a multitude of incidents with somebody trying to break into your place. Keep something in mind. Most people think that nighttime is when these home invasions happen. Home invasion is when somebody's breaking into your house and you happen to be present at that property. But the reality is most home invasions actually occur during the daytime. Again, that's not burglary as in you're gone, that's home invasion. While somebody is home, most of these invasions take place in the daytime between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. So how could we store guns around the house? Of course you want to store it safely, we'll cover that in a different video, but where do you want to store them so you can have a tactical advantage in your home regardless of where you may be at? So here we have a home design from one of my clients, and the situation is it's husband, wife, and they have a teenager and then a young child. This is where their rooms are at. This is the master bedroom. These green stars represent where I recommend to keep guns in that home. And then you see here we have a patio with a sliding door, and then all these big black marks right here are doorways. And then here on the orange, these represent no-shoot walls. So walls that if a criminal is standing in front of, we can't engage due to what might possibly be behind that. So for example, we're not gonna shoot through our master bedroom wall and have an over-penetration go into our kids' room. There's no way that that's going to be useful. So just keep a couple of things there in mind administratively. Now remember, the moment you realize somebody's breaking into your house, always first grab your weapon. Then you're going to call 911, activate the family emergency response plan where you grab the kids and then you activate the audible alarm. You get back to that family safety zone, that isolated area of the house that you could easily lock down with a fatal funnel. We covered that in another video. And then you're going to lock it down. You're going to lock down that fatal funnel. So that's going to be like the methodology of the whole entire family emergency response plan so that we can keep our family and loved ones as safe as possible. However, it never works how we want it to work. We're never all in the right place at the right time. So we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible and capable of responding to a multitude of circumstances and incidents. And this is how I recommended this client keeps their guns around the house. And I'm going to show you exactly why. What we want to take into consideration is where we could possibly be in the house relative to potential entry points, meaning doorways or large windows. So here you can see we have the main entrance, we have that patio sliding door, and this was the two really big entrances of this facility, this residence. The windows were accessible, but not very much so, and when you actually break down the locations of the guns in this house, it didn't even really matter because when we focused on the main entry points and we strategized where we wanted to put the guns based off of those, it actually worked for all the entry points, potential entry points at least, for this particular home. So let's say that the husband and the wife are sitting in the living room and the kids are both in their room, it's late at night, and they happen to be sleeping. And all of a sudden, a criminal decides to come in through the sliding patio door, which, by the way, this is a very common place for criminals to come into because they're very easy to bypass, pop out that slide, pop out that track, and push it in. So a criminal comes in. Now, what we want to be considering when it comes to tactical firearm storage is a couple of things. One, do you have to intersect or move closer towards the criminal, the adversary, in order to arm yourself? If the answer is yes, then that's incorrect. We do not want to have to move any closer to the criminal or the person breaking into our home. In fact, what we want to do is we want to move away from them and be able to arm ourselves, creating that distance, allowing us to get those good, well-aimed shots off. Because firearms are distance weapons. So when that comes to closing the gap on criminals in your house, you don't need to. You want to create distance. I always preferably say one room deep away from that person so you can get that good, well-aimed shot. Shooting inside of a house is really easy once you understand the geometries of fire, the angles of fire, because it's all very close quarters distance, close quarters battle, CQB. So if somebody breaks in your house from this door here, what we want to do is we want to have the ability to move away from the criminal and arm ourselves, which is why you'll see the weapon system here and then the weapon system down here in the study. So if somebody comes in through this door, they have a weapon safely stored right there in the living room within a few feet distance away where they can then get it and then ultimately engage that threat. So for the living room, this was the safe weapon storage location that we recommended for somebody breaking into that patio. Now, let's say that we are in the kitchen and somebody does the same thing. They break in through the patio. Do we have to move closer to them? No. That's why we have the weapon stored right here in the kitchen. So we're not actually moving towards the criminal. Now, if we're like, let's say in the laundry room or down here in the hallway or this part and somebody breaks in, do we want to run to either of those weapon systems? No, we do not, because we're moving in a direction towards the criminal. So what do? We move back towards the master bedroom, grab the weapon system, and then we can begin to engage and keep our family and our loved ones safe. Let's say that we're in the study. Of course, there's already a weapon in here, so all we got to do is just go to the weapon that is currently in the study. And so on and so on. So you can see now how you need to be thinking when it comes to storing weapons in your home. Let's say that we had a criminal break into the main entryway. Now we're just going to run through the same set of scenarios. Okay, well, what if we are in the living room and somebody breaks into the main entryway? Do we have a means of moving further away from that criminal and gaining access to a firearm? And the answer is yes. If we're in the study, yes. If we're in the kitchen, yes. If we're in our bedroom, yes. If we're in the laundry room, yes. Now, if we're in the bathroom, the way that this house is currently set up, we do not have a means of defending ourselves. So now we've identified a problem, a gap, a vulnerability. So what we would do is we would make a recommendation now, hey, let's make sure that we store a weapon here in the bathroom. Now, I'm not talking like Godfather style, tape it underneath behind the toilet bowl. You got to be smart about this stuff, ladies and gents. This isn't a joke. But what I am suggesting is that you store a weapon in this area because you need to have a means of moving further away from the attacker and not having to move towards them or intersecting them along your way to arm yourself and defend yourself against them. What if they're in the spare room and somebody breaks in through one of those main entry points? Yes. So this is how we begin to problem solve multiple modes of entry, multiple facets of entry, or multiple invaders, because with all this migrant stuff going on, we're seeing organized attacks on people's homes. In wealthier neighborhoods, they're specifically targeting it. These people are coming from Ecuador, Belize, Venezuela, you hear about all the time, and they're emptying out their prisons and they're sending it over here just like the Cubans did, just like Fidel Castro did with the Cubans back in the 80s. And what happened? That's where movies like Scarface come from, is because you had this massive influx of people with nothing to lose, nowhere to go, no money, but everything in the world to gain by being as violent and heinous as possible. So you're probably going to see an uptick in trend, especially this year, 24, election year. They've had time to organize and be established, and so you need to be prepared to get to a weapon system in your house regardless of where somebody happens to come breaking in. So now let's take a look at like the windows. Let's say somebody came in through this window down here and broke in. If you're in the master bedroom, you can get to a gun. If you're in the spare room, you can move further away and get to one of these weapon systems. Laundry room, bathroom, study, etc., etc., etc. So think about this, strategize in your own homes. How can you store firearms safely in different areas of the house so that strategically, if somebody was to break in from any way possible, keep in mind there's only two ways people can come in your house, doors and windows, unless they blow a hole in the side of your home, or unless they there's even still, like if they go in a crawl space or a basement, there's a window that they're getting into. So just think about this. If somebody was to come in anywhere in your house, could you get to a gun without having to move closer to them or intersect them? Want to move away, get that good angle, that good geometry of fire, and then engage them from that distance. All right, everybody, if you found this useful, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Join the Lethality University, because this is what we're breaking down. We've got our first module coming out, our first segment of training, that's home defense. We go into all this stuff plus so much more. I'm here for you all. My name is Joe Malone. I'm a former Special Operations Marine, and I want to teach you everything that I do to stay safe and to keep my family safe against violence and violent crime. I truly believe the only way that we could preserve great peace is by being capable of great lethality. And when great lethality comes through us, then we can look out for one another and we can make the world a better place because our love for humanity will then grow. All right, everybody, take care. I'll see you in the next one.